that we're moving into another phase of the COVID-19 pandemic in Jamaica. We are moving now to what is described in clinical terms as community spread, which means that we will see more cases emerging in communities around the country that have no immediate link to someone who has traveled with the virus coming into Jamaica. It is expected, it is understood that it will happen. It is the way the virus works, and that is the case in all countries. So when you hear us say we have cases under investigation, which sometimes we put in the releases, it means that some cases don't have an immediate and obvious connection with an original person who traveled in. Remember, all cases are brought in, are imported, but after a while, it becomes very difficult to determine when it came in and who brought it in. That would lead to someone having it. So it's important because the country needs to appreciate that over time, the virus is going to move across the country, and you're going to have more persons getting the virus. It is not an indication of failure on the part of the public health officials, on the part of the government, on the part of the country. It's just the way it works. The virus is highly contagious, very easy to pick up, as the CMO said earlier. You go into a public bathroom, you put your hand on the surface, somebody was there who coughed on it, you pick it up. You're talking to someone too close on a public transport, in the market, in a shopping center, in the supermarket, you pick it up because of the droplets. So it's very easy to pick up. And over time, a lot of people are going to pick it up. So we're moving in that phase now, and Jamaicans need to understand that, which is why they need to observe the measures that have been introduced, because we want to not make it too rapid. So in a sense, and I'm going to introduce a term here tonight that has to be dealt with very delicately. In a sense, we're moving in a phase that could be described with the efforts of public health as a managed spread. Managed spread meaning we want to slow down. We don't want it to spread too fast. We know it's going to spread anyway. Over time, we don't want it too fast, because if it happens too fast, it means more persons are going to turn up in the hospitals where we don't have enough beds, enough doctors to treat them. And the catastrophe of that is manifested by just watching international news. You see it on the big newscasts where people are waiting in lines to get into a hospital, where people are dying at home because the hospitals don't have enough facilities. We are trying to prepare for that, which is why we're buying up new beds and ventilators. But if we don't manage the virus, then it could spread too fast, too quickly, and could be a real challenge for public health to respond. So that terminology of managed spread is something that Jamaicans are going to have to eventually adopt, recognize, and understand. And that's the community spread phase that the efforts of public health have to be working on. The second that I'd like as a takeaway is the issue of asymptomatic versus symptomatic. Clearly, symptomatic means you have symptoms. You cough, fever, respiratory issues, breathing problems. The more severe, the more requirement for hospital care. And we do hope that we have a minimal number of that, but we have a projection as to how many we will have. Some may be extremely severe, so you require high dependency or ICU, which is when you need the ventilator to help you breathe. That's the most severe. The persons who are most susceptible to that are persons who have underlying conditions, diabetes, hypertension, cancer recovering patient, cardiovascular disease, obese, overweight, that sort of thing. They will more than likely have a more difficult time with the virus because their immune system is compromised, which is why exercise is good, which is why eating well is good, which is why boosting your system with their vitamin C, etc., is good. The other is the asymptomatic person. And what the studies and the projections are saying is that the majority of persons who have the virus won't feel any symptoms. They are asymptomatic. They won't have the fever, the cold, the headache, and so on. Now, that could mean hundreds and thousands of us in Jamaica based on our population. And it's likely to mean that over time. So you won't need hospital care. And you won't have enough hospital beds to put people in hospital who are asymptomatic. The response to that, therefore, is that the country must come to terms with the reality that many will have the virus and will have to be treated at home. Take the medication, basic stuff that the doctor will tell you, or over the counter. I guess over time we'll have to inform people on that. Stay out of interacting with other persons. Continue to try and get your nutritious meals, but stay at home, rest until you get over the virus. And I'm saying to Jamaica, increasingly, expect persons living in your community, maybe in your household, who are positive for coronavirus, but not sufficiently ill to go to hospital, and we're going to have to put you in, you're going to have to recommend that you stay at home. And the final point I want to make before we close is around discrimination. If we assume, and it's a good assumption because it is based on fact, based on the projections, based on what happens in other countries, that most Jamaicans will be exposed at some point to the virus, it means that we are predetermining those of us who discriminate, that because that others will have it and we won't. And it's a very faulty assumption. It's a faulty assumption, even sometimes with our best of efforts, because the virus is of a particular nature where it will spread. In other words, today for me, tomorrow for you. That's very likely. We don't want it to happen, but it's likely. And so what we say to Jamaicans, you're really discriminating against yourself if you form an opinion that somehow the virus is only for certain people and not for you. It would be a very wrong assumption. So we ask Jamaicans, please, don't assume that persons who have the virus have brought it in, have created it, are somehow cursed, have somehow sinned, have somehow deserve it, have somehow are bringing a plague on your community or your household. None of us are immune to the virus. It started somewhere else, and it is now here. None of us must claim or think that we will exclusively escape and it is others' fault, somebody else's fault. We must treat each other in a way that almost assumes that tomorrow we're going to need the support of those who are so infected and impacted today. And we really need to cut the hate and work together as a country, as communities, to overcome. I really do not want to hear about any case of persons threatening people, abusing persons because they hear that they have the virus. And also, for healthcare workers, we don't want to hear that we are also not cooperating with our healthcare workers.